So I'm honored to invite up to the podium our afternoon keynote, and his name is Mark Shihady. Mark is the principal attorney at Root Law Group, but to Penny Lane, he's so much more than that. So earlier this year, when executive orders were being handed out, when ICE raids were happening, when people were so afraid, and we, Penny Lane, were trying to figure out, like, how can we provide these services to our clients, our community, we learned about Mark. Mark is an immigration attorney, and he offered his services to Penny Lane pro bono. Yeah. Definitely deserves applause. And he met with staff, and he met with clients, and he provided those services that people were just clamoring for. In a time of fear and uncertainty, Mark was able to provide a little guidance and support when people needed it the most. And to have him here today is just, I just feel so incredibly grateful that he agreed to not only sit behind the desk and talk to clients and meet with them, but to show up here in person to deliver a message to all of you about immigration rights and how our immigrant families can navigate that. So if you would all please join in welcoming Mark Shihady to the floor.
Hello, everybody. How are you guys all doing today? Is there a handheld microphone so I don't have to stay like this the whole time? Thank you. All right, this is a lot better. So at first, I want to thank Wendy, Judy, the entire Penny Lane organization for allowing me to come out here, meet some of you. Hopefully, I get to meet all of you one day, and just go over some of the issues that our immigrant communities are facing, especially with the new administration coming in, and whether or not it applies to you directly. You may have friends, you may have families that are in fear, and they're scared to leave their home, they're scared to go to work, and employers are also trying their best to do what they can to help their employees. So it's affecting not only the community, but the economy, and I'm hoping it stops. So today I'm just going to briefly explain, with the current raids going on, what that means for somebody who's detained. As I was saying, if somebody's detained by ICE, what rights they have, the relief they can seek, and moving forward if they're placed in proceedings, and how they navigate the system. So I'm going to pull up the PowerPoint now so we can dive right into it. So current immigration raids and changing laws, as Judy mentioned earlier, with all the new executive orders going around and how it's affecting the immigrant communities. We'll start with how the Department of Homeland Security works or operates. The Department of Homeland Security has different branches within the agency. The main ones that are affecting the community right now, or the communities, are ICE and ICE ERO. So Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, and then Enforcement and Removal Operations. These are the guys that go out in the field, they target somebody specifically, they detain them, put them in a car, and drive them off to some detention center 200 miles out in the middle of the desert. There's CBP, which is Customs and Border Protection. Those are the guys that when you arrive at the airport after international travel, or you're coming in from, let's say you went on a trip to Mexico and you're coming back in at the port of entry, those are the guys that will inspect your documents and let you back in. Right now, CBP is actually going in the field and away from the border. They're allocating officers from the border to assist within our own community. So I don't know if you guys have seen them driving around. They're usually in like white pickup trucks or white vans. Just, be on the lookout for them. Then there's USCIS, which is United States Citizenship and Immigration Services. These are the people that will make decisions about your immigration matters. So whether you're on DACA, TPS, whether you filed for a marriage-based green card or any other relief within the immigration system, they're the ones that will adjudicate your application. Now, what does that mean for people when they get called in for their interviews? Sorry, I'm talking a little fast. I've seen clients go to their USCIS interviews not knowing they had a deportation order from 20 years ago and then get picked up, detained, and sent back. And these are people trying to follow the process the legal way. It's sad, it's unfortunate. They filed the petition, they paid the fees, only to get trapped and removed from the country. Sorry. So, who's the most at risk right now? People with criminal records. And I'm not talking about a speeding ticket. I'm talking about if, let's say, somebody has a domestic violence charge, drug possession charges, assault and battery, grand theft auto, anything that you can think of where you're going to spend some time in jail, those are the people that are going to be most at risk of getting picked up by ICE and the remainder of the agencies. Prior removal orders. Every person here in the country that has previously filed an application such as DACA, TPS, marriage petition, a green card, has a specific A number. They call it an alien number. It's usually 9 digits, and I'll show you right now how you can look up to see if there is a prior removal order within the immigration system. Those that have been in the country less than 2 years. There's a new case that came out. It's a Board of Immigration Appeals case that basically says if somebody's here in the country less than 2 years, they shall be detained pending the adjudication of their asylum claim. So those that, recently entered through the border, let's say in December of 2023, those people are at risk right now of getting caught, detained, and then they'll have to continue their proceedings in the detention center. It actually happened to one of my clients, and he was trapped. ICE sent him a notice to come in for his ICE check-in appointment. He's been doing these every month for the last year and a half. So at his last one, his uncle calls me and he said, hey, they just put the handcuffs on him and they took him. And I'm thinking, why is this going on? So it took me 2 days to find out where he was. He was in some detention center all the way out past Bakersfield. And for 2 months, they did not give him his court hearing. I had to send multiple requests to his ICE officer, to the detention center, before finally they said, all right, here's the hearing date. So once the hearing was set, we show up and they don't even have him in the room. What they did was they transferred him again the day before so they can delay his process. Why do they want to do this? Because what they're trying to get the person to do that's detained is give yourself up, go home. You don't want to deal with this anymore. You want voluntary return. I want to sign my removal order. I want to get out of here. But for him, he stuck through the process. We ended up winning the asylum case. He's out now. So it all worked out. Thank you, guys. And then the final one is visa overstays. So a lot of people came here as tourists, maybe in the 90s, the early 2000s, and they just stayed. They never left. If you or somebody you know is a visa overstay and they have a relief, for example, through their U.S. citizen spouse, child who's over 21, I recommend fixing it as soon as possible. Right now, they're actually, believe it or not, approving these kinds of green cards fairly quickly, meaning permanent resident cards. So visa overstays are a big thing that they're going after right now. I've had 2 clients get a notice to appear in immigration court, and it says, for example, you entered the United States on such and such date, you were in the US for this period of time, you have kind of maxed out your stay, so we're gonna remove you. So just keep that in mind if you know anybody that came here as a tourist and is looking to fix their paperwork, they should do so as soon as possible. So earlier I mentioned the prior removal orders. So how do you check to see if you have a prior removal order? There is this website. It's through the Executive Office of Immigration Review, the EOIR, the Immigration Court System. You enter your A number, that's that 9-digit unique code or unique number listed on your work permit or your permanent resident card, and you select your nationality, what country you're from, and you just hit submit. Sometimes something will pop up if you were ever in the system, and sometimes it'll say no case found. So that's one resource that people should definitely utilize to kind of confirm their status before they move forward with their immigration process. Because if you file something and you never check it out beforehand, you're gonna get trapped. You're gonna go into your interview, they're gonna say, oh, you have a deportation order, come with us. So that's very important. Rights for people who encounter ICE. You see these videos going on social media of people just pulling them out of the cars, going into homes, going into workplaces. It's kind of scary. So, and I've had my own personal family member, not like immediate family, but my parents immigrated here from Syria back in the 90s. So there's a big Syrian community that's here, undocumented or on temporary programs that have had to deal with this. So, right to remain silent. You don't have to tell them anything. They can take you, process you. You do what, of course, obviously not let them do whatever they want to you, but there's no fight that you need to put up if they approach you. If they do approach you at your home, they don't have the authority to enter your home unless they have a judicial warrant. Now, there's something called an administrative warrant that is just issued by the Department of Homeland Security. It's not signed by a federal judge, so they can't just go inside your home without a judicial warrant. The detention center. So a lot of times when they pick people up, they'll process them at, let's say, the federal building in Los Angeles, if we're talking about this area, and then they'll need to pick which detention center they're gonna send them to. That is always gonna be unknown. It could be Eloy, Arizona, it could be Otay Mesa, it could be Adelanto. There are plenty of detention centers that they're currently using for detainees. So once the processing has been complete on your end, like they put you in the system, you can now start calling your family, start calling your lawyer. It's good to tell them where you are, and obviously don't sign anything. So sometimes what they'll try to get you to do is sign your own deportation order, your own removal order. Always say, I want to see an immigration judge. I want to seek relief from the court. I want to apply for asylum, for cancellation of removal, which we'll get into. So never sign anything, and always request a hearing in front of a judge. So family plays an important role. While you're on the inside, they can help you from the outside. So your family is going to be the key contact for, let's say, finding you a lawyer or locating which detention center you're at. Make sure that they have your, your biographical information, your country of birth. If it's not your family, maybe neighbors or friends that are close to you. Date of birth, full and accurate spelling as it appears on your passport or your birth certificate, so that way they can locate you within the system. Your A number. If they have your A number, it becomes very easy for them to be able to find you. So this is what they call the online detainee locator system. This is why I'm telling you to have your family, or if it doesn't apply to you and you know somebody who is undocumented and you'd like to help, get their information. This right here, if you put in that A number and their country they were born in, and you hit search, it'll pop up which detention center that person's at. So you'll be able to call the lawyer, say, hey, this person is in Otay Mesa, he's been detained, I just found him on the locator. Or you can search by biographical information. First name, last name, country of birth, and then date of birth. So it's important that, your family or if anybody needs that help to get that information. Removal proceedings. So this is after you've been processed, after you refuse to sign anything and they want to, let you see the immigration judge. There's going to be a notice to appear, kind of like when you get a traffic ticket here. You'll have to go to the court, admit, say, I plead guilty, not guilty, and so forth. It's the same thing with immigration court. And then you can request from the judge the forms of relief that you're seeking. So that could be asylum, withholding of removal, convention against torture, and cancellation of removal. Cancellation of removal is probably the most important one if you know somebody or you personally have been here for 10 plus years before getting a hearing in front of the judge, and you have a U.S. citizen child who's under 21, or a parent or a spouse. The immigration judge, through this process, can actually give you residency without you being deported, and then you become a citizen 5 years later. So, very important. U.S. citizen and permanent resident family members of anybody here illegally plays a big part in being able to keep them here. So that's a very popular method that people use. Okay, so there are some alternative methods here in the United States that a lot of people are not familiar with. For example, there's the T visa, which is for victims of severe human trafficking, protects you from deportation, from removal. There is the U visa, which is victims of qualifying criminal activities. So if somebody who, for example, was assaulted, walking home from work, and they called the police, and the police made a report that this person was assaulted, they can actually get a green card for helping law enforcement, believe it or not. It's also a protection from removal and can grant permanent resident status. There's the VAWA, which is the Violence Against Women Act. It also applies to men. So if you're married to a U.S. citizen and you're being abused, and you're scared to call the cops because of your immigration status, immigration doesn't care about your status. They'll give you a green card. So these are just some basic routes that people can use in the event that they want to seek residency in the United States and they're afraid. This isn't going to apply to everybody, of course. Everybody's situation is unique. So how can somebody be proactive during this immigration enforcement, these ICE raids that are taking place? So always carry your immigration documents with you. The permanent resident card, your work authorization. So back to the A number thing, it'll be 9 digits that that's the person's unique ID and all their immigration paperwork. If somebody's filed a case, you'll have the receipt from immigration. So if you're stopped, you tell the officer, hey, I filed my case, here's the receipt number, here's the receipt notice, I'm just waiting for my interview or my green card. And then any questions? I know, Judy, we wanted to leave some opening for questions. Yes?
Where can they find their A number?
Where can you find their A number? So their A number is usually on their work permit, or if you have a copy of a receipt notice, it's usually listed on that as well. No, not everybody's going to have an A number unless they filed a petition with immigration.
Hi, question. So in your experience, since the second Trump administration, how well are the norms holding? So I know you're talking about people going to the court using the process, but from what I can see, none of those they don't give a crap, sorry. So just in your experience, so we see things on social media, but just for us to really know, since your boots on the ground, how are those norms holding up against what they're trying to do with the immigration system, process, courts?
So, yeah, that's a good question. What I was mentioning earlier, the people that have been here for less than 2 years, those are the people that I'm seeing at the immigration courts being detained until their proceedings are finished because of the case that came out that says they shall be detained. So they want to do what's called expedited removal. It's a process where if you've been in the country less than 2 years, we don't have to give you a hearing in front of the judge. You'll have an asylum hearing with an officer. If the officer finds that you have no credible fear, they can just send you back. So those are the people that you see on social media at the courthouses being detained. It's primarily those that have been here less than 2 years. So to these, the visas we covered, there have not been any proposed changes as of yet. They did recently issue a memo on the SIGIS visa, which is a special immigrant juvenile, meaning somebody here who's a juvenile that can't go home and live with one or both of his parents because of abuse, abandonment, neglect. They just issued a policy in June that says if you file a SIGIS petition, it still doesn't mean you're protected from deportation. Yes?
This is a little bit unrelated to what you're talking about, but I was wondering if you have some tips for our community to exercise caution when hiring an immigration lawyer or representative, because I know there's a lot of fraud related to that.
Yes, and me and Renette were talking about this earlier. So be careful when you hire somebody for immigration legal services. A lot of people will tell you they're an attorney, but they're not. They're like a notary public office, and I've had clients who left them, came to me, I looked at their paperwork, and it was a mess because they're not licensed to practice law. So whoever the person that you call, get their name, look them up on the California State Bar website, and verify if in fact they are an attorney. So the bar's website's going to be your source. Yes.
Thank you, Mark, for all this. So you mentioned we have a right to remain silent when detained. Should we remain silent or actively say, I choose to remain silent?
So remaining silent is, it's kind of vague, you're right. Remaining silent except for two things. One, telling them you want to see an immigration judge and you want to speak to your lawyer. That's it. Those are the only two things that should come out of somebody's mouth who's detained. Yes.
Hi, thank you, Mark, for your presentation today. I wanted to ask if you knew the answer to how protected DACA recipients are, so the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. I know that they were more protected under some presidencies than our current one. And so, in your experience, how protected are DACA recipients?
So right now, DACA, nothing has changed, except, obviously the most recent rulings in Texas and how it's technically unlawful there. But I remember when Trump was running for president, he mentioned during one of his interviews he did, I can't remember, that people who graduate college should also receive a green card with their diploma. Now, do I see this happening? I hope so, but under the administration, probably not. But yeah, DACA people have always been scared about their status, and there's nothing that has changed or have been updated since.
Thank you, Mark, and certainly Ronette for this morning's presentation. Very helpful and insightful information. As you were presenting, my mind went to us being a child welfare agency from DCFS and how you talked about the removal of immigrants and the impact that it's having on families. And just curious to know what type of preventive measures are being given to the families, because that's now creating layers of trauma for the family.
Correct. Are you asking in terms of how to prevent the person from getting detained in the first place, or?
Not so much that part of the question, but let's say the person is detained, and so now the family is going through these levels of uncertainty and just additional trauma because now they have to go through this path of their family member being detained. And so in your experience, are you aware of any preventive measures or resources for the families while they're going through this journey to wrap around the family?
Yeah, so I'm not aware of any specific, place or organization or something they do during the difficult time of their family member being detained, but they usually just want to talk to their lawyer because they want to know what is the ultimate result that's going to happen to my dad, my mom, my little brother. And that's why we try to do our best to comfort them and tell them, all right, look, there's a hearing on this date. We need you there. You're going to talk to the judge. We're going to call you as a witness, for example. And it sucks because I was explaining to Renette, there was one of my clients, he got ordered removed, and his mom is there in the courtroom bawling her eyes out. It's just the reality of it. But this case was unique and had a different set of facts. So, but yeah, I'm not aware of any specific organization that can help the families. Yes.
I was going to just mention, I think I mentioned it earlier. So to help families, I think the preventative measures here, if we have minor children, is to update contact information at the schools, but do that family planning in terms of the caretaker affidavit. Potentially, I have issues with guardianship, but that's also another avenue, but also those limited scope power of attorneys that handle medical decisions. It doesn't take care of legal custody of the children, but medical decisions, school decisions, property, bank accounts, potentially letters for minors to travel as well. And I would also strongly recommend, if the children, minor children, are United States citizens, also applying for passports. So we have done a passport clinic, and that really provides such a relief for our parents. I would say that. And then my contact information, because I'm a nonprofit organization, we also have other nonprofit collaborators who provide mental health services for those who remain. Because the reality is we are trying to provide as much time before the deportation to protect the families who are still here. Hopefully that helps.
Yeah, sorry, I don't think I understood the question. Now I know you were specifically referring to minor children where their parents are taken. I apologize. Thank you, Renette.
Yes.
Yes.
For VAWA, the Violence Against Women Act, if someone wanted to apply for that, how severe would the abuse have to be, or would it just have to be physical, or do the other financial, mental?
No, it doesn't necessarily have to be physical. We've done VAWA cases where it's emotional trauma. We do psych evals. The person provides us with the therapy records. We review them and basically assess whether they're going to qualify for VAWA. And then there's the more severe cases with police reports, restraining orders. It's gotten bad. The guy spent a year in jail. Those are clear-cut VAWA cases. But it doesn't have to involve violence or the police for the person to qualify.
And then one last thing, for applying for that, would that person have to be detained as well until there's a result?
No,
Similarly,
actually,
or no?
for VAWA cases, once you file it, you can also file for the green card at the same time.
Oh,
So you'll just be pending permanent resident status, but the VAWA application itself could take 3 to 4 years to get adjudicated.
thank you.
Mark, I have a question.
Yes.
So for the person that's undocumented, is there a form that needs to be downloaded or prepared to give to as part of the family planning that will help with the assistance in when the family members are seeking an attorney? Because I know in the meantime that the person is being moved around, shuffled around. If the family doesn't have that form, there isn't much of recourse in obtaining an attorney.
No, you're absolutely right. I don't know how many, numerous times I've spoken with clients and they tell me their brothers or family members detained, and I ask them, okay, what's their date of birth? And they can't even give that to me, so I can't even find them. So what we mentioned here, country of birth, date of birth, make sure that the spelling of the name is accurate. If it's one letter off, it'll throw off the system. So it's important to have that. And keep it in a planner, in a binder. It doesn't matter, just as long as you have that information, the attorney can find where the undocumented person is.
So basically, I think, is there a specific form that when seeking counsel, because if it's not filled out or if the family doesn't have it, they can't go to you and say, hey, can you help us with either getting our family member back or whatever. And so in the meantime, the attorney's trying to locate the family member, but without that form, there isn't one where you can speak to on behalf of the family member.
Are you talking about like a form for establishing like attorney-client relationship?
Exactly.
So that is what they call a G28, and that's going to be the ability for the attorney to But here's the thing, if you don't know who your attorney is, you can't really fill out that form. The attorney will fill out that form. I just had to do it. I send it to the detention center with a return envelope with the stamp on it. The client will sign it and then mail it back. But to locate the person, to locate the undocumented person that's detained, you only need the information that we discussed here. So there's no like specific form that an attorney needs to be able to locate the person. Does that make sense? Okay. Yes.
For the things like the T visa, the U visa, do they need to have filed a police report?
For T visas, I'm not too familiar with them. We don't do them at our office, but we do a lot of U visas. The U visa does require a police report, and it also requires the agency that responded to that call or of the report to certify it, that this person did suffer from this criminal activity.
Is that true for the VAWA as well, the police report?
VAWA it could be no police report, it could be a temporary restraining order, it could be a full police report. You can do VAWA without a police report. Yes.
So I wanted to know, so let's say you don't get to your family member in time at that hearing and they're deported. What happens then? Are they just banned from applying again to come back, or what happens?
So you mean like the lawyer doesn't show up, or?
Like you said, yeah, they're deported. Like you said, mom showed up and they had already deported her.
Yeah, so I think it's gonna depend on the certain set of facts. Like this guy had a pretty big rap sheet, and so there's likely no hope of him ever coming back to the United States lawfully. But if it's somebody that just got deported because they overstayed their visa, there's waivers and things that they can apply for while they're overseas. If they have like qualifying relatives like U.S. citizen parents or U.S. citizen husband or wife. Thank you guys. Thank you so much.